Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the land, the people of the Kulin Nations. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continued relationship to this land. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid style and is streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Streams and recordings of Council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced or republished without the permission of Council. If we experience any technical difficulties this evening, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. I remind attendees that any member of the public addressing Council must extend due courtesy and respect to Council and the processes under which it operates, and must take direction from the Chair whenever called on to do so. Speakers must remain respectful, and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive, or objectionable, aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of Council staff, or relate to a matter outside the powers of Council. Before we proceed with tonight's meeting, Chris Carroll, the Chief Executive Officer, will provide a statement.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I would like to sincerely apologise to those in our community who've been affected by the recent disruption to our curbside waste collection services since our new contractor, Citywide, commenced delivering those services on Monday the 3rd of July. Citywide has unfortunately experienced some significant issues with its mapping for routes and bin locations, and while most residents have been unaffected, this is little consolation for those who had their rubbish, FOGO and missed recycling bins missed after being rolled out for collection. I totally understand the frustration of our community who've been impacted by the issue. We've been very clear to Citywide that we expect them to urgently resolve their collection issues, and we've been doing everything we can to help. A dedicated council team has been working through this issue with Citywide as a matter of urgency, and we've redeployed council staff from other services to assist with this. Citywide has been responding, and they have been deploying additional trucks every day as they attend to scheduled pickups and then miss bins. At the same time, we've been redeploying council staff and trucks from other services to provide additional crews to support Citywide in responding to missed bin collections and responding to the most urgent of requests in our community. While there are no regular scheduled curbside waste collections on the weekends, we've had a fleet of Citywide and council trucks and crews out on the road on Saturdays and last Sunday, focused on missed bin pickups across the city. Since last week, our Resource Recovery Centre in South Melbourne has been open to Port Phillip residents to drop off mixed recycling or bagged garbage that would normally go in the curbside rubbish bins at no charge. We've also been continuing to operate our communal recycling hubs for glass and food organics, which are located across the municipality and are available for use by anyone in our community. To ensure that progress is being made towards restoring service levels, council officers have been conducting daily audits, particularly concentrating on those areas that have had missed bins previously. Each morning after the night before reviewing the route maps that Citywide has developed, our audit team is then double-checking areas scheduled for collection the day prior to verify that collection has taken place, and if not, ensuring that it is scheduled into the missed bin run. Communicating with our community through this process is a priority for Council. We've been providing regular updates to our community via daily messages on Council's social media pages and website updates, while our Assist customer service team has been working hard responding to any inquiries received through our website or by phone. If you're experiencing any missed bin collections, please report it to us, ideally via the SnapSend Solve app or via the My Port Phillip website, or you can call us. We're reminding residents reporting missed bin pickup to please leave your bin out so the waste collection crews can empty it without further delay. The reason it's important to report these missed bin collections is so that we can identify for our contractors exact locations where bin collection errors might be occurring, so that we can capture critical data that feeds into Citywide's maps for service improvement and accuracy, and enable, as a last resort, council crews to be sent out to collect any missed bins as soon as possible, particularly when they've been missed on multiple occasions, which is reducing significantly. I can report that there's been a substantial reduction in missed bins, with curbside waste collection services getting better every day, but it's still not where we want it to be. And although the numbers show the service is improving, we know there's still work to be done, and we will continue to work until that is done. I understand the frustration of our residents and our councillors and those who have been affected by the issues, and I apologise unreservedly and appreciate your patience during this time.
Thank you, CEO. Is there a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was asked by a resident how long the Resource Recovery Centre would be open for them to bring their rubbish free of charge to. Do we have a time frame around that at this stage?
Lachlan Johnson.
Through you, Mayor, we don't have a timeline at the moment for when that will cease. It'll be for the foreseeable future. As the CEO said before, we are seeing significant improvements in missed bins, although it's nowhere near where we want it to be. So for the foreseeable future, the Resource Recovery Centre will stay open. It's open 7 days a week, including limited hours on Saturdays and Sundays, for residents to drop off commingled recycling, so anything from their yellow lidded bin, and also bag garbage, free of charge.
Thank you. All right. The next item, or the first item on tonight's agenda, is a request to attend by electronic means. I've been advised by the CEO that we've not received any requests to attend electronically for tonight's meeting. We'll move on to apologies. Councillor Nyagui is an apology for tonight's council meeting. Councillors, do we have any further apologies? That looks like the rest of us. Thank you. On to the minutes of previous meetings. The minutes of the council meeting held on the 5th of July 2023 and the special council meeting held on the 12th of July 2023 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? No. If not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? Thank you. Councillor Baxter. And was that Councillor Bond? Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. On to declarations of conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? I see none. We'll move on to public question time and submissions. Under council governance rules, questions can only be asked about items not on the agenda. Therefore, if you're speaking to an agenda item tonight, please note I will not refer these to an officer for a response. However, councillor may wish to take up that question on your behalf when the item is considered. Now, based on the number of speakers tonight, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. We are going to put all the virtual ones at the front of the meeting, so then we'll come to the people in the room, just to make sure that we can move through that technical side of it more smoothly. Now, I just want to say, we think, Brenda Forbath, you're first up with a question, but we haven't seen you come online yet. Now she is? Okay, good, never mind. With the virtual speakers who are joining on the WebEx platform, I'll call your name and the governance team will unmute you. A pop-up will appear on your end. You'll have to select Unmute Me. Then I'll need you to please state your name and suburb, and you'll have the 2 minutes to speak. So we'll start with Brenda Forbath submitting a question to Council. Brenda, can you hear us?
Councillors, hearing councillors, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Brenda.
Okay, thank you. Brenda Forbath from Elwood. My questions relate to the current garbage collection problems. Firstly, why was it necessary to change the rubbish collection contractors? And what were the factors that Council took into account in making its decision to change to the new contractor? That's my first question. And my second question is Council aware of reports that in some areas all rubbish is being amalgamated into one, and this will surely result in increased landfill costs for Council? So how is this being addressed? Those are my questions. Thank you, Council.
Lachlan Johnson.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Brenda, for your questions. Last year, Council's previous waste contract was coming to an end, so it's standard and normal for Council to conduct rigorous public tender processes when contracts like that are due to expire. That occurred throughout 2022. Council awarded the contract to the current collection contractor citywide in October last year. In this case, the contractors were engaged after a lengthy assessment process. Some of the things that were assessed included value for money, technology, capability, methodology, as well as corporate social responsibility contributions. There was a rigorous probity process that applied throughout that procurement process. Council is aware of the circumstances where multiple streams of rubbish have gone into the same truck. This is unfortunate. It's unfortunately a short-term consequence of us utilising some of our other teams, such as our street and beach services, to assist with the misbin recovery. These trucks are not designed for the purposes of providing curbside waste collection, but have enabled us to make additional collections, which is a priority whilst these issues are resolved. The citywide contract does require that the 3 streams are separately collected. This temporary measure of having council staff and council vehicles reallocated to collect curbside waste will cease as soon as Citywide is able to provide the full service that they're required to under the contract and that our community expects. Whilst we regret any recycling that ends up in landfill, we are trying to keep this limited as much as possible.
Thank you. Next, we'll go back online to Kathleen Kedler, speaking to item 7.1, petition response, stop current plan to redevelop Lagoon Reserve. Kathleen, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Kathleen Kendler from Port Melbourne. Lagoon Reserve is a very special dog park. It is accessible to everyone, being the nature of the flat path and the openness. For example, easy access for the disabled, for the elderly, for people with prams, just to highlight a few. And it's the only park that is open and has lighting to allow a safe space for dog park walkers in the winter months when it gets dark early. Gasworks or the beach, for example, are not viable alternatives due to physical access issues for many of our community and also safety issues with lighting in the evening for many months of the year. Given that 5 p.m. is the most popular time at Lagoon Reserve after 5 p.m. For dog park walkers, what temporary, safe and accessible alternate areas has the council identified whilst the building is going on and into the future with increased midweek sports training for dog park walkers? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I call upon Anupen Sharma, speaking to item 7.1, petition response. Can you hear us?
From Port Melbourne, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you. 2 minutes, please.
All right. I just wanted to put forward the fact that dogs cannot be under 100% control 100% of the time. This is regarding voice control and quote-unquote sociable control that has been stated in the council's background information. And removing gates from mostly fenced areas still endangers dogs' lives. So that is not an appropriate response. I just want to know why there is such resistance to providing a fenced, sizable, off-leash area to dogs in the city of Port Phillip.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add to, because we're not taking questions right now, but you were able to speak to it in general. We might have a councillor take that up at the item, though. Is she still there? Oh, sorry, you were muted. Sorry.
Oh, no.
You're back on. Sorry, we may have missed whatever you've just said.
No, that's okay. I also wanted to know how the council is providing for dog owners, especially with over $650,000 collected from dog registrations every year.
All right. Like I said before, these questions may be taken up by a councillor during the item.
Sure.
But this is just if you want to say anything else about what is written in the officer's recommendation, this is a good time to speak to the item.
From my personal usage of the reserve and from looking at the history of the reserve, it should remain a multi-purpose recreational and sort of a residential community park and not be converted into a primary sports pavilion.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I call upon Helen Taylor, also speaking to item 7.1. No, you don't have Helen? Has she not come online at all? Can't get a hold of her. Okay. Helen, if you're listening and you hear us calling for you, get in contact with the governance team. Does she have a number? Yeah, okay. But also, I just want to let you feel better that we do have your officers are continuing to contact you, but we also have been circulated to councillors your submission, so that is also received by officers. I call upon Shah Van Gaensel, speaking to item 10.1, J. Talbot Basketball Facility. Shah, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi. I'm Sharon Van Gaensel in St Kilda. I live in Albert Street, which is directly off J. Talbot Reserve, and I've used this park for 20 years. Unfortunately, currently there are 4 households missing from Albert Street. There's two houses are on the market and 2 were pulled down. So this project feedback doesn't really reflect all potential residents who would be affected by the project. My ongoing concern is that this project has always been put to the residents as an update to the basketball court rather than any major change to the park. The park hasn't been refurbished for about 15 years, and the focus has been on just making the change to the basketball court, and we don't really know why that is the case. We weren't involved in council discussions with the National Theatre concerning the court's new location. That was presented to us and to us for feedback. We weren't asked open-ended questions such as what we thought would work in the park and what we didn't. Yet other reserves, such as Sol Green, when the feedback process for them was commenced, they're exactly the kind of questions that were asked. We were simply asked what we thought about the location presented. As a result, we have an option that impacts the safety of users, particularly women walking in this park at night, since part of it will now be screened by vegetation. It encourages gatherings at night by giving a secluded meeting place, and that's exactly what we would want to avoid. It has noise implications for residents, since there's no plan to use noise minimising material on the concrete path in front of the court or through the park, and this hasn't been recognised as a potential nuisance. I also don't understand how a 1.2 metre fence is going to stop balls going on the road when the court is being moved from its current location, apparently because balls are bouncing up onto the roof of the National Theatre. Those walking on the path in front of the court will have safety issues, as will those sitting on the grass in front or on the concrete benches. So the other aspect that is puzzling is that there's no attempt to return the gravel area to green open space or to ask the residents what we'd like to be doing with that.
Thank you, Cheryl. That's been the 2 minutes. I really appreciate you coming tonight to speak to us. Thank you. The people in the room, you've heard the beep. It's kind of loud and confronting, but that is the 2-minute beep. But we'll now turn to the people in the room. The microphone here at the desk, come on down. It's already on, right? Are we checking that? Is the red light on? If the red light's on, it's on. But I'll need you to say your name, your suburb, and you'll be given the 2 minutes with the lovely timer telling you when that's finished. All right. I call upon Alex Macon submitting a question to council.
Thank you.
Now, Alex, I have you and also Annabelle Jones submitting also questions that seem similar.
Yep.
So I'm going to have you both come up, then we'll get the response, yeah?
Fantastic.
Good?
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and councillors. Back again. Name
and suburb.
Alex Macon, Port Melbourne. At the 21st of June council meeting, council responded that it was going to provide dog usage counts in off-leash spaces that would be shared over the next month. It is now the 19th of July, and to my knowledge, that information has not yet been made publicly available. So I asked council, what specific date will this data be shared with the public? And will council meet the timeframes that it provided in its minutes at the 21st of June council meeting? Thank you.
Thank you. Annabelle Jones, if you can come on down. Do you want to? You don't have to, if he's covered it. All right, no worries. Well, thank you for coming. I'll go to an officer now. Is that Dana Pritchard online?
Through you, Mayor. The dog counts have been taken as part of the background report for the off-leash dog guidelines, which was shared with the deliberative panel prior to their first session on the 19th of June. After that, the deliberative panel had some updates to the document which have now been done, and it will the full document, which includes the dog counts, will be posted on the Have You Say page prior to the end of this week.
Thank you. Now, Alex, you're back up, please. I call upon Alex Macon to speak to item 7.1, the petition response. Stop current plans to redevelop Lagoon Reserve.
Thank you very much. And Mayor, Deputy Mayor and councillors, I have circulated via email proposed amendments to this. Once again, Alex Macon from Port Melbourne. I appreciate the dilemma that council has in trying to accommodate multiple uses of our reserves. However, we are in a situation where, according to council's own reports, the number of dog users is growing. The pressure on those reserves from a perspective of providing off-leash usage of dogs, for dogs, is also increasing. It is interesting in item 7.1 that council seems unwilling to entertain the accommodation of a temporary location for off-leash dogs whilst this construction takes place, on the premise that its off-leash guidelines are currently being formulated. Yet it is willing to undertake the redevelopment of Lagoon Reserve, which also has an impact on those off-leash guidelines at the same time. Now, this council has had time to plan for temporary accommodation of dogs during the construction. Can we please give the people a bone here and provide some ability to accommodate the growing needs of dog users in this municipality? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. I call upon Ana Garcia, speaking to item 7.1.
Hi, Ana Garcia, Port Melbourne. Dear Mayor and Councillors, I'm here today with great disappointment and concerns as the priorities of our community are being overlooked. The reserve, which has been an inclusive space for all residents, is now facing a threat to its very essence. In 2013, Lagoon Reserve vision and guiding principles were developed to ensure the community's vision is achieved over the long term. The three guiding principles only: protect and enhance the natural look and feel of the reserve, encourage and support a diversity of community-based sports and recreation activities, and continue to recognize the important functions of the reserve as a dog off-leash socializing and exercise space. The proposed plans to prioritize organized sports is not only misaligned with these guidelines, but is also misaligned with the community feedback. The information presented by the officer is not complete, misleading and not transparent. The distances of the close-by off-leash areas is not correct. They actually differ from 100 to 500 metres farther to what they actually say in the document. This option seems appropriate on paper, but reality is that they're not safe or adequate due to the walking distance from our homes, the high dog density, and or maybe lack of lighting in these places. Not to mention that there is only a small section of the beach available for dog walking during the time the lagoon will be closed. The comments also state that the rates of sports and recreation are increasing, but it does not say by what percentage organized sports is increasing versus recreational activities, which we have the data, and we know recreational activities are a lot higher. It also fails in providing data at all, anything that could help understand who lives in Port Phillip. It is disheartening to witness that certain individuals are pushing their personal agendas, seeking to convert this beloved park into a sports ground, neglecting the needs of the entire community that relies on it. As a council, it is your duty to represent the interests of the entire community and not just influential voices. I once again ask you to stop the current plans until a balanced solution is developed. We must preserve the heart of our community, embracing its diversity and meeting the needs of all residents. Thank you.
Thank you. That was 2 minutes perfectly done. We didn't even have to have the buzzer, so thank you. I call upon Kevin Pereira, speaking to item 7.1. Hi, Kevin. Name, suburb, and you have 2 minutes.
So Kevin Pereira, Port Melbourne. And what was the last part?
Oh, and then you have 2 minutes to speak. Yes.
Right. So I wanted to talk about community, which seems to be a forgotten aspect of this discussion. So Lagoon Reserve is actually in quite an apartment-heavy area, and it's not just a place to walk your dog. For people who are time poor or work from home, Lagoon Reserve provides a vital social connection. I've lived in Port Melbourne for 21 years, and this is the first time I felt compelled to attend a council meeting. I've owned a dog for only one of those years, and through visiting Lagoon Reserve, I think I've made more social connections in the local community than I have in the previous 20. And almost all those connections have been made at Lagoon Reserve. Now, there's something special about Lagoon Reserve. It offers something that dog owners and none of the other off-leash areas do. And I know people who drive here from Docklands every day just to walk their dog, not just because they like the space, but because they like the community atmosphere that is there. Every evening, whenever I turn up, and I've been counting every time I've gone recently, there's between 30 and 50 dogs there, right? And people are always moving in and out, so there's probably about 100 people going through there every evening. And that's a community group that's larger than any sporting organisation. And sure, we don't have a catchy team name or matching uniforms, right? But we are a community group with a common interest in that space, and which we love. And it's something that council should be fostering, not destroying. This community matters, but it's fragile, right? If we don't have a time slot where we can consistently access the park, this community will die. If you close the park for months without a nearby alternative, this community will die. Right? Please don't kill this community. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Abdelaziz Ismail, speaking item 10.1, J. Talbot basketball facility, please.
Good evening, everyone.
You'll need to speak into the microphone if you don't mind, because it's being recorded. Thank you. So name, suburb, and 2 minutes, please.
My name is Abdelaziz Ismail. I live in St Kilda, and I'm here to talk about the Talbot Reserve.
Go ahead. Yes.
Right. I would probably be the one person who uses that reserve more than anybody else. I have 20 years. I've had my business on one side, and I'm living on the opposite side. And in the executive summary, the first line says that the existing facility is being highly utilized. Now, I can assure you that this is not true. It is not highly utilized at all. It is hardly utilized. And if we spend $100,000 building another facility in the middle of the park, that's going to be as underutilized or hardly utilized as the one that's existing now. It's going to be $100,000 gone to waste. And this would be the best case scenario, really, because it would be a problem, big problem, if it is actually utilized. Because there will be a big basketball that weighs more than half a kilogram bouncing around. It's hard as a rock and bounces everywhere. And people walking in one of not one, but two, but three footpaths surrounding that basketball, proposed area in the basketball, will be under threat of being hit by a basketball. And it could cause serious harm. And we're talking about little children walking past, people walking their dogs, people on bicycles, push bikes, people on scooters, and all of these people will be under threat. And so we'll be spending $100,000, not just wasting them, but spending them to create a man-made hazardous zone. People having their lunch will have the basketball bouncing all over them. And there's a reason why basketball courts are surrounded by fences. And if you take 1 minute to look on Google to see basketball fence height, you will find that the standard height is 10 feet, which is 3 meters. Now, it is going to happen that this basketball is going to hit someone. And this is why I think that this project should be scrapped. And if it is going to happen that the basketball is going to grow into Barclay Street, then someone's going to get hurt, seriously, and this project should be scrapped. Last but not least, if this basketball court is going to be utilized by people actually playing basketball, which is a strenuous sport, I assure you that within 10-15 minutes, they would need to go for a toilet break. and there's going to be unsociable behavior because they're going to be using the bushes when there are kids entering the theatre. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I call upon Leah McAuliffe speaking to item 9.1, LGBTIQA+ Action Plan, Consultation, Feedback and Adoption.
Sorry, Mayor, we might just swap.
Oh, sure, not a problem. So Justine's going to go?
Yes.
I now call upon Justine De La Riva speaking to item 9.1. Welcome.
Thank you. Justine De La Riva, St Kilda. My name is Justine De La Riva. I'm the Chief Executive of the Victorian Pride Centre. The Victorian Pride Centre is Australia's first purpose-built LGBTIQ+ community home. I'm also a member of the City of Port Phillip's LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee. Both last year and earlier this year, my fellow committee members and I spoke to you about the importance of the Council recognising and including the voices of the local LGBTIQA+ communities as part of its commitment to an inclusive Port Phillip. One of the first steps has been to guide the development and implementation of the City of Port Phillip's LGBTIQA+ Action Plan. Apologies, let me correct that in two respects. One of our key objectives has been to guide the development and implementation of the City of Port Phillip's first LGBTIQA+ Action Plan. But this is not the first step. This action plan builds on the Council's rich history of supporting and championing all members of its proud and vibrant communities. Back in May 1996, which I shudder to say is almost 27 years ago, and I might have been at the Prince of Wales, the Council hosted a forum for the queer community. From the forum, the Council adopted its 1996 Statement of Commitment to promote, and I quote, a fair, just, tolerant and inclusive community. The statement came from a long-standing awareness by Council of the importance of its rainbow communities and their contribution to the economic, cultural and social development in the local area. Even with the Victorian Pride Centre itself, a key matter in the selection process, along with the availability of the freehold land, was Council's historical and deep commitment to supporting LGBTIQ+ communities. We've spoken before about the vital need for local governments to lead and support its local communities. Indeed, local government is a place shaper. On behalf of the Victorian Pride Centre, the Advisory Committee, I commend the Council for this significant achievement, which is fundamental to creating an inclusive city. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. Now I call upon Leah McAuliffe, speaking to item 9.1.
Liam McAuliffe, Balaclava. I'm a resident here in the City of Port Phillip, barrister by day and the chair of the city's LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee. This is it. We've done it together as a community, as a committee, and with the significant support of your staff, Council is now to adopt this action plan. This is directed at creating positive and lasting change for the city, focused in ensuring that our queer communities are seen, counted, understood and celebrated, to be supported to live, work and thrive in our city. It embeds Council's roles as a service provider, leader, ally, consumer and in its own workplace. The focus of this action plan is on long-term systemic change needed to improve and celebrate the lives of our rainbow communities. And if I might be permitted to share a brief moment, that it's been a significant weight of responsibility to uphold this city's long-standing support and tradition and a legacy which has gone on for nearly 27 years. In this endeavour, I acknowledge, and the committee acknowledges, the support, dedication and leadership from the city's own Building and Inclusion Division. This plan has been very much a labour of love and their support has been pivotal in its development. And we thank also the Council's Employee Pride Network for participating in the consultation process. This document, plain in text but complex in depth, is a critical opportunity for this council to foster and stand by its commitment. It has now become even more important in recent times to uphold freedom of expression for our communities by ensuring protection from violence and threats to personal safety. This document is an opportunity to ensure the city's diverse identities and experiences are connected, and that there is we champion the local community through diversity and intersectionality. To end on our vision for this action plan, it is for an inclusive city where diverse LGBTIQA plus communities are safe, connected and celebrated.
Thank you very much. Now that's the end of my list. But do we have Helen again, maybe online? Not at all. Okay, sorry Helen, we weren't able to get in contact with you tonight, but thank you officers for trying. Anybody else in the room that I may have missed and you've not filled in the blue form? No? All right, then we'll go back. We're now on to councillor question time. Councillors, do you have any questions you'd like to raise? Councillor Pearl?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. If I may raise two questions this evening. Could officers please provide an update on the outdoor dining area to be implemented in Dundas Place Reserve as per the funding that was approved under the most recent budget, please?
Dana Pritchard? Oh, no, sorry, Alison Kennewood.
Through you, Mayor, an update on where we are at this project. We will have outdoor dining installed in November in time for summer. We've got long lead times for the furniture, so there's a 12-week lead time, so we hope to have it installed by November.
Excellent. Another question, Councillor Pearl?
Just a follow-up, if I may. Are the traders being consulted on the design of that furniture, and will the public be displayed some images of that furniture and how it will look?
My understanding is yes.
Great, thank you. And one final question, if I may. Could officers provide an update on the efforts being made to improve traffic flow in and around Queen's Lane? What is Council doing at the moment to mitigate the significant issues faced by residents?
Nellie Montague.
Through you, Mayor. In December 2021, Council considered a planning application at 464 to 466 St Kilda Road, which backs onto Queen's Lane. Council endorsed a recommendation in response to traffic and parking concerns raised by the community residing in Queen's Lane for a report to be prepared for Council to assess the current function between Hannah Street and Kingsway, including recommendations as necessary regarding traffic movement and functionality. The following tasks have been completed to respond to this recommendation: site observations to assess traffic flow, on-street car parking occupancy surveys to gauge parking demand, and traffic counts to capture queue lengths, areas of congestion and types of vehicles accessing Queen's Lane. Collected data has been analysed to identify key issues and recommend changes that address traffic volumes and traffic flow, congestion during peak periods, loading and waste collection on the street, and access restrictions to laneways and off-street parking bays. Initial findings of the draft report include that the Queen's Lane-Kingsway intersection has delays and queues in the PM peak and is not performing satisfactorily. Recommendations to address this issue include improving compliance of the clearway and loading zone on Queen's Lane, modifying the clearway restriction to include tow-away zones, modifying the keep clear line marking on Kingsway to increase the number of vehicles that can exit Queen's Lane whilst vehicles queue at the end of each cycle on Kingsway, and working with body corporates to coordinate waste collection to occur outside of clearway restrictions between Arthur Street and Kingsway. This work will progress immediately, while further medium to long-term options to improve traffic conditions on Queen's Lane will rely on state government approvals and will take longer to complete. The final report with all recommendations will be provided to Council officers in August, and officers will assess the appropriateness of recommendations and provide a report to Council in November 2023.
Thank you. Any other councillors have a question tonight of general nature? Pardon? Later? Okay, never mind. Any other questions? No. All right. Then move on to sealing schedule. Councillors, we have no items for sealing on tonight's agenda. On to petitions and joint letters. Councillors, we do have one petition and no joint letters on tonight's agenda. It's 7.1 petition response, stop current plans to redevelop Lagoon Reserve. Do councillors have any questions of the officers in relation to this item? Councillor Sirikoff?
Thank you, Mayor. I've been contacted by a resident regarding image 2 in this report regarding the proximity of alternate dog off-leash areas, and in that concern that there's no stating of the times of year and hours when dogs are allowed at these alternate locations. Can Council please provide those times to the public, whether it be through a website publication or some other means, as to those allowed dog off-leash times of the year, and also noting those times which are designated as a prohibited dog area, such as Port Melbourne Beach?
Ryan T.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mayor. And yes, Councillor, that information is on the website. We'll make sure it's updated to reflect those times, but it'll be available there. In addition, if Lagoon Reserve is closed for any period of time, we'll put up signage there to advise dog walkers and others as to where their nearby dog walking facilities may be.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Crawford?
Do any of our other areas where dogs are on leash or off leash, or more particularly off leash, have lighting currently? Is that part of any other spot in the municipality?
Alison Kenwood?
Through you, Mayor, yes, there are other areas. So Eastern Reserve has lighting. Some of the other spaces that have been identified do have lighting available.
Maybe I'll take a question. Sorry, let's not have back and forth, please. Do we have a document that may suggest where these parks are that have the lighting, so that it can be something that our community can inform us if it's not accurate?
Again, through you, Mayor, we're happy to provide that information again in signage. If part of the park's closed, we're happy to provide details around what's available in the proximity, and we can also include lighting as well.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
I guess my question was, it is not the norm, though, for many of our spaces that a lot of people are limited throughout the municipality by light, natural light, or if they was lucky enough on sports grounds. So it's really dependent. I guess it's not the common situation, is it?
So through you, Mayor, there is temporary lighting currently at Gasworks, but you're correct, Councillor. I guess the large majority of the dog-specific areas, other than Eastern Reserve, there's lighting there. Our other sports fields where there's sport being undertaken, you could walk your dogs when there's lights on leash. Again, Gasworks has got temporary lighting available currently, but you're correct in that the only designated dog off-leash area currently in the municipality is the Eastern Dog Reserve.
Councillor Pearl?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Can I just get clarification on the Council's classification of Lagoon Reserve? A lot of people have described it as a dog park or a dog reserve. What is the Council's official classification of that space, please?
Through you, Mayor,
yeah, thank you.
It's classified as a sporting reserve.
Just want to remind people in the gallery that under the Council's governance rules, members of the public must extend due courtesy and respect to Council and the processes under which it operates, and must take direction of the Chair whenever called to do so. So I please respectfully ask that you keep the comments so that we're just keeping the formal arrangements here. Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
Could I just clarify, because we've got the current process of looking at dog off-leash parks, that process, when is it due roughly to come back to Council, the end of that process, please?
Alison Kimman? Or Dana, sorry.
Through you, Mayor, we are due to bring the dog off-leash guidelines for adoption at the start of next calendar year, so at the start of 2024.
Thank you. I have a question. I know the community would like to see a temporary dog park during the construction for the displacement time. What are some of the constraints around a temporary park that why it's not being recommended here?
Through you, Mayor, there's a number of reasons. A lot of it has to do with timing. To put in a temporary dog park, we would need to undertake a feasibility study to work out the best space for a site that would need to already be a dog off-leash area, otherwise that would require a change to the local law. We would also need to do community engagement for those, particularly for those people that lived close to the park, as we understand that having dog parks near people, near residences, can impact the residents surrounding them. And we would also need approvals from DIQA as the land manager.
As a follow-on question, so a place like Hester Reserve along the 109 tram line was identified in the DAMP as being one that we might investigate doing in the future. It's off-leash now, but it's not fenced. Is that something that has fewer hurdles that could be considered, or is it still everything you've just said a limitation?
Through you, Mayor, we could consider it. It would still require approvals from DIQA. We would still need to go through a design and a construct process, and we would still need to undertake community engagement through that process. We also currently do not have resourcing to undertake a project of that sort, so we would need to stop something else on the project portfolio list and replace it with this project.
All right, thank you. Are there further questions for this item? If not, I'll be moving an alt motion that has been circulated very late, but I read it out loud to you, so don't look at me angrily. So it is the normal officer's recommendation with the addition of releases the dog usage counts conducted during February and March 2023 by 1st of August, or I think as told tonight, maybe by the 21st, which is Friday of July. But managing expectations, I'm going to leave 1st of August up there. Noting that Council had already committed to releasing the count data within the month following the Council meeting held on the 21st of June 2023. Then number 11 is investigates the provision of increased annual management and city amenity officer visitations to Gasworks Art Park to support increased dog off-leash numbers during the time that Lagoon Reserve is out of action due to construction. I'm looking to see if anybody would like to second that. Councillor Pearl to second. Thank you. All right, so I'll speak to it. Sorry, Jane Peperick. I find our community has gained a lot of strength in the dog community around Lagoon Reserve, more specifically since COVID, for example, when we saw a huge increase, and it's been sustained, and it's growing by popularity day in, day out. This is a really important area. One is its location, its flat service. There are people who have wheelchairs and dogs that are using this area, and the lighting. It has lighting, but also the lack of sports. Now, the sports have been there. It's also been a lagoon. It's had a long history of these two items. But the sports have gone away because the surface is so bad at the moment. This community's come in and they use it every day, all day long, morning, night, throughout the day, and on the weekends. So although I respect that sport is definitely growing in our municipality, and it has always been the home of sport, I don't feel like we can just displace this established dog community so readily. Thank you. These are only small additions that I'm hoping that councillors will adopt tonight. So one, we've already discussed, you want to hear the dog counts. This is something, it'd be good to have the data provided to you. So we've heard that this can probably be done by Friday. So that's an easy addition. And the next part is saying that although Gasworks is very close in proximity, it has a different dog demographic of being larger dogs. And so predominantly Lagoon Reserve is the smaller dogs. So when you go and take them over there, there's conflict. And I think that the idea of having, if this is going to be the place that we transplant people as the closest opportunity, would be that we have our animal management team and city amenity officers there to help with that education, broker that arrangement a little bit better so that they can live, or the dogs and the owners can be more just more harmoniously in the space, because I do understand the dogs have different temperaments and different breeds, etc. And that's why there is probably more separation. So I'm sorry this isn't a temporary dog park. As you've heard, the fencing and all the things, the fencing's not always the greatest ones. The temporary fencing that exists, little dogs can get out of them. So it's really hard to, in a fast timeline, to deliver something like that. But I think that in the longer term, that's still possibly an opportunity. And we have this big dog off-leash guidelines review happening. So it's not forever, not going to see some improvement. But for the short term, I think this is where we can land. And I hope that my fellow councillors will support it. Councillor Pearl? All right. Would anybody else like to speak to this? Councillor Bond?
I'm not going to support this, and if this motion fails, I'm going to move the original officer's recommendation, primarily because I think both those points are pretty much redundant. We've already released the dog off-lead data to our current dog consultation group, so it is available out there, and I think officers are committed to release it by Friday. In terms of instructing or investigating additional animal management officers, I understand we've just increased our resources in that particular area at the last budget, and then we need to allow them to do their jobs, to go where they believe they are best required. At the moment, we've asked them to go down to, for example, Waddy Watson as an oval, and I know they were down there the other day with dogs off lead controlling that. They're sitting at Eastern Reserve every morning between 6 and 7 a.m. because we've asked them to do that. We've tasked them with a whole heap of jobs, and I think it's the onus is on us to allow them to do their jobs as they see fit to do them, as they prioritise their jobs to do. So for us then sit here and say, we need to prioritise gasworks whilst Lagoon Reserve is closed is I think impinging on their ability to do their jobs. We've got these officers, they're paid well, we've got to trust them to do their jobs as they see fit, and I'm sure they will be at Gasworks, I'm sure they will be at Lagoon Reserve, but we need to allow them to do their jobs. It's an operational matter, not really one for us, the councillors, to sit here and instruct them and tell them how to do their jobs. In terms of speaking just generally, Lagoon Reserve always has been a sporting field. I know it's been very very poor condition of late, and we're doing something about that. I think we're investing $14 million in there into a new sporting field and a new pavilion so that our sporting clubs can use them. And it's not going to be, once it's up and running, it's not going to be excluded. Dogs aren't going to be excluded here. It will continue to operate as a gas park, as many of our other sporting, as a dog park, as many of our other sporting fields do. In the meantime, it'll only be a short inconvenience. We've got Gasworks Arts Park about 150, 200 metres away. There's an off-leash dog area 200 metres from this one, which you might have to have little dogs and big dogs share a park for a small period of time until such time as Lagoon Reserve is back up and running again. I know it might be a small inconvenience to some, but it's something that you'll probably have to do while we bring this park back up to standard for the entire community. So I won't be supporting this, and I'll move the officer's recommendation in the event this one fails.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
I won't be supporting this either for a number of reasons. We do have a big challenge in this city. We have people who have, increase in dogs. We also have increase in people who need to use sporting fields, and we also have people who want areas where there aren't dogs off leash. So that's actually, we're making a huge investment, and we're currently going through a process looking at that big challenge and how do we get to a balanced outcome for everyone in our community. But that all means we're all going to have to give a little. No one's going to be happy in the end. We are trying to accommodate a whole lot of competing interests, and how do we work together. Now, the reason I won't be supporting this is because Lagoon Reserve has been offline, but it is one of our few ovals that we currently are full-sized oval, and we know how we may not have the numbers as such, but there has been huge increase, particularly in female sports, and trying to accommodate all of that is really important. But dog owners are really important too. And one of the interesting things is we sat in on a short presentation, which I think we should video what the lady said and put it out for our community to understand. She is an expert in this, and she's been working with lots of councils, I think, not in New Zealand as well as across here, and this is not a unique problem to the city of Port Phillip. And what she actually talked about is that actually fencing off areas is the last resort that you want to. The problem is we actually want owners, good responsible owners, which most people are, but all owners, so their dogs are under their safe control. And she said you don't want to be putting fences around everything. You actually want people who have control of their dogs, whether they're on leash or off leash. And that's the problem, the bigger problem that we need to address, and how do we help educate and how do we engage those people who are not doing the right thing. So the problem with having patrol officers there is you want the behaviour to be preventative. You don't want it to be our patrol officers there giving a ticket after your dog's been attacked. So we actually want the behaviour to change, and that requires, it's not just what council provides, it's about everyone in your community taking responsibility, and that maybe be talking to that politely to that pet owner. Have you been to dog training class? You know, the council's got free ones, whatever we look at doing. But we actually have to go back to responsible behaviour is the key thing that we need to address here, so that you feel safe with your pet, whether they're in off-leash parks, whether they're big or small dogs, and that is the challenge. So we are looking to accommodate a fenced-in dog park on Lagoon Reserve, but there will be a disruption period, and we cannot magic up things for many reasons. There are lots of areas wanting it. We're doing that research, that big piece of work, and looking on how we can address the long-term problem. And yes, it will be an inconvenience, I know that, but other areas, as each sports field, whether it's a sporting club or the dog walkers, are all displaced and disrupted for a period of time. Peanut Farm has been done, Elwood has been done. So I'm asking you to help us. Your community can still thrive and survive. You just moved to Gasworks for a while. And, you know, in the end, we are trying to balance some really big challenges, and we are investing in the dog community to try and find some of those off-leash parks and to identify more spaces that can be off-leash during all times of the year. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Any other councillors want to speak to the item? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at the two additional clauses that you're suggesting that we add in, Madam Mayor, and the first clause about the dog counts. I think that's already been covered. We've got an answer from our council officer, so we know that those dog counts are going to be released. So we probably don't need clause 10. Clause 11. I tend to agree with what Councillor Bonda said. We've just increased the number of animal management officers. If there are any issues at Gasworks Park in the coming weeks, if and when Lagoon Reserve is out of action, then I would expect that our people in our animal management team will be moving their officers accordingly. And if there's a need at Gasworks Park, then they'll be there. If there's a need at Eastern Reserve, they'll be there. If there's a need at the Peanut Farm Reserve, they'll be there, and so on. So I don't think either of these two clauses are necessary. So if the amended motion isn't successful, I'll be supporting the original motion, which I believe Councillor Bond is going to move. So if I could just speak for a few minutes towards the original motion. And first, I need to confess I have been a regular user of Lagoon Reserve, wandering up there with other people's dogs. It's a fantastic place to take dogs out. I'm also regularly at the Peanut Farm Reserve. I'm involved with the football club at the Peanut Farm Reserve. And if I get down there at 5:30 on a Thursday night, lights are going, there are lots of dog walkers. The footballers come out and do a couple of laps. The dog owners move away. The footballers are off by 7:30. The dogs are back on and the lights go out at 9 o'clock. So at the Peanut Farm Reserve, dog owners have got full access to an off-leash park without any sports people there on all weekdays until about 5:30, and then they're back again at 7:30. I would assume that something very, very similar will happen at Lagoon Reserve. So it will be a full community resource. It won't be just a sports field. And I hear some of the petitioners are very concerned that it's going to be a space dedicated to sport. I don't think we're making any secret that sport's probably going to be played there on the weekends, on afternoons, and that there probably could be training there a couple of nights a week. But my understanding is that at least 22 hours a day on weekdays, and probably for at least 20 hours a day at weekends, it will be available to all those people who currently use it with a far better surface than it's currently got. I also noticed that the upgrade to Lagoon Reserve, although the pavilion works are going to take something like 18 months, my understanding is the works to the surface are taking place between November and April, which is during daylight saving time. So by the April of next year, these oval surfaces will be available, the lights will be on. So we're looking at 6 months of not having access to that particular dog off-leash park, but it's in summer, and if the lights aren't quite as good at Gasworks, and I'm led to believe they're perhaps not quite as good as the lights currently are at Lagoon Reserve, at least people would have access to several hours of daylight. They probably won't need to use the lights there till 8:30 in January and 6:30, 7 o'clock towards the end of daylight saving in early April. So I get the concerns that the petitioners have raised. They're concerned they're going to lose their beloved off-leash area. It's going to be taken over by sports clubs. I don't see that happening at all. I understand there's a real need for additional sport space, but I believe that sport and other activities can get along really, really well. And the perfect example of that is the Peanut Farm Reserve, where, as I've said, people have got access to Peanut Farm Reserve 3 nights a week until 9 o'clock, and the other 2 nights a week they're probably not able to access between 5:30 and 7:30 at sports training, and then on Sundays the Oval's used for 4 or 5 hours of sport. Otherwise, owners have got access to that to have their dogs in an off-leash park. I'm sure the same thing will happen to Lagoon Reserve. I'm really looking forward to be able to take some friends' dogs for a walk on the beautiful new surface that's going to exist there, and then perhaps on a Saturday afternoon go and watch some sport taking place there as well. So I get the concerns of the dog owners. They're concerned they're going to lose access to their beloved park. And yes, for 6 months there will be a lack of access, but once the oval surface is completed, it's going to be back as a full community facility. And yes, we're not hiding the fact that sport will be played there, but for much of the time things will be able to coexist, or exist not just as usual, but better than they are at the moment, because the surface there at the moment is not a particularly good surface. Whether you're a dog owner, a sports person, or just someone walking around, you tend to put your foot in a hole and just about twist your ankle. It'll be a much better place for people to go wandering during the evenings when there isn't sport training, and a much better place for sports people as well. So I'm happy to support the original motion. I accept the petitioners' concerns. I think they've misread the documentation, though. I don't think that many of their concerns are valid. I accept their concerns about the 6 months when the park's going to be out of action, and yes, there needs to be other spaces available. We've heard that we've got Gasworks Park available. We know there are lights there. And for those people who'd like to travel a little bit further, Council these days is leaving the lights on at Murphy Reserve until 8:30 every night, and yet sports clubs are only training at Murphy Reserve for 3 nights a week. So for 4 of the 7 nights a week, there are 2 very, very large football ovals that are available if people want to take large dogs to a very large area where they can run around without interfering with members of the public. So a little bit of inconvenience to sports clubs, a little bit of inconvenience to dog owners. One of the earlier councillors said not everyone's going to be very, very happy, but I don't think not everyone's going to be particularly disappointed when all this comes to fruition. I think this is an excellent proposal, and I think everyone in the community is going to benefit.
Thank you. Any other councillors want to speak to this? No, then I'll close. It looks like this one might fail. They're very small, minor items to have such a bugbear over, but it's a gesture to the community to make sure that they understand that we're listening to them. I think it's interesting where, it is a benefit when these works are proposed for the grounds or from November to April. That's excellent for the lighting issue, but that's a time that we don't have beach access up in our end of Port Melbourne. There's 2 very small dedicated beach areas, so the most limited time of the year is when these are being proposed, so it's extra concerning, I understand. I know in the report it said that we're going to consider the fence part that Alex Macon, I think, led that about putting the fence part around the pavilion area. And I'm delighted that that's in there, that we're going to consider it. And I'd like to see that we actually can come up with some dates to inform our community about when that will be considered, that it's not just in the future, if we can nail down when that's going to be considered. The fencing comment was interesting with, I get it, that the consultant's right. Fencing's not the most ideal thing. Lagoon Reserve is currently not fenced. It has a nice buffer of planting, and it's a big open space, and that's why it's successful, similar to Garden City Reserve, very big open spaces. But with an inner city area, with limited area to house all this growing dog population, we need to use things like fences near roads, etc., to keep the animals safe, because there are things that happen quickly. I know that some people don't value the life of a dog the same as a child, and I can see where you may have different things, but the dogs really matter to the people who are the owners. So it's important that we maybe aren't dog owners ourselves, but consider the people who are dog owners, that they do feel strongly about this. They have a lot of knowledge in their ownership, and I think that they should have a lot of respect from us too. So thank you, everyone. We'll put this one now to the vote. We have a foreshadow if it fails to go back to the officer's recommendation. So all those in favour? 2. Thank you. All those against? That fails. Thank you. We'll go. Councillor Bond has said he foreshadows the officer's recommendation. Who would like to second that? Councillor Martin. Okay. Councillor Bond, you would like to speak to?
Just very briefly, to highlight our urgent need for some sporting grounds. We've had a number of ovals out of action over the last 3 or 4 weeks. One at Murphy Reserve, one down in Elwood. It means we've had to rearrange and reshuffle games so that only one ground was available at Murphy, so they had to play all day, every day on those grounds while the other ground was rested and brought back up to a suitable condition. We're constantly managing and trying to keep on top of our sporting grounds because of the usage that's increased over the last couple of years, particularly with women's sport, but also with junior sport and some senior sport as well. We're investing heavily into our football ovals with works planned at Murphy's with 2 new soccer pitches, the baseball pitch. We're doing works or planned works at Lagoon Reserve. I think we've got an upgrade of Peanut Farm planned. We're looking at works down in Elwood. So we are making a significant investment into our sporting facilities over probably the next 10 years of this and future councils, because the demand is there, and we're seeing a lot of wear and tear caused by additional dog owners and caused by additional sport trying to all share the same space. So it is important that we do give ourselves every opportunity to utilise every area, every square inch we do have that is currently set aside for sport, and we make sure that they're all able to be utilised for sport, but also multi-purpose spaces where dog owners and other events and things can take place in all these places, and the entire community, as Councillor Martin said, is able to use these spaces. So thank the petitioners for coming along here tonight and speaking passionately about their dogs, and we look forward to getting this space built later this year and early next year, so you can come back from wherever it is you choose to walk your dogs during the 6 months that this refurbishment takes place, and you have a brand new space to share with sporting clubs. As Councillor Martin said, sporting clubs won't be there 24 hours a day. They'll only use it for a couple of hours a day, and the rest of the time it'll be available for dogs. So commend this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Firstly, to support what Councillor Bond has said, and then secondly, officers, as we get to the fine-tuning of the development of Lagoon Reserve, I'd love to see taps that we can use both for dogs and the dog owners, bowls for the dogs, so that it really is a dog-friendly area when the dogs are using it, and then it's also equally appropriate for sport for those 2 hours each evening for a couple of evenings a week, and on Saturday and Sunday afternoons when the sporting people are using it. So, as Councillor Bond says, we're maximising our use. Hopefully there are people using Lagoon Reserve from daylight until the lights go out at 9:30 at night.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Sirkoff.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the Lagoon Reserve was identified back in 2013 as requiring a redevelopment, and this is our opportunity 10 years later to get it right. And that includes an area which was a lagoon, as we all know, that the soil type is not appropriate for a good growth of grass, so you've got a nice grass surface for sports teams to be playing on, and also for people to be enjoying nice grass areas to be walked over. So this is an opportunity where council can introduce proper drainage and proper irrigation of that large reserve area, which in the long term will create a beautiful area for everybody to share. And also, it's got the other benefits of, because we're going to do it properly and have that irrigation and drainage, is that we're going to save money in the long term to get a better outcome, so that we're not spending like hundreds of thousands of dollars every year because of the wear and tear on the ground. And so there's multiple benefits, not only just to the community, but the budget of this council so that we can continue to maintain ovals and reserves for dog owners across all across the city of Port Phillip. So I think for the small time of inconvenience, we're going to get a better outcome in the long term, where we can plan for things like a fenced-off dog-off leash area, to get all those facilities that everybody wants, whether you're a dog owner or you're a sports person. So I'm completely in support of the direction of this project, and so that everybody has a great outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors speaking to this item? Councillor Pearl?
No problem. Just to explain my voting pattern, I voted against this project originally. I think I was the only councillor that voted against it because I don't see it as value for money at the moment based on what's being proposed. And I don't think the end project is going to satisfy everybody. In fact, I think I can't see a situation based on the usage of that park by dog users at the moment, dogs, humans, and then sporting clubs, that the field is going to be able to sustain itself based on the experience and the evidence I've seen in other areas. On that basis alone, I think we're coming up with a design profile to appease everybody, and on the other side of the next election, we'll find a situation where we spent $15 million and possibly more on building a sporting field, which probably won't be able to sustain dogs digging holes in the middle of it and humans trying to kick balls along the surface of it. I hope dearly I'm wrong, but you can't have it both ways, and that's what you're trying to do here, effectively. No, don't clap me because I'm not necessarily on your side on this one, right? But the $15 million is a huge chunk of money. I understand it's the geology of this area is extraordinarily complex. It used to be a freshwater spring before it was dug up somewhere in the 1850s or 1860s to become a lagoon connected. So the area is extraordinarily complex from a soil point of view, and I get that, so it's a lot of money. But just based on the profile of the project, I don't necessarily agree with the value for money at the moment concept of what we've proposed, and that's why I voted against it. So I'll abstain from this one based on my previous voting pattern.
Thank you. All right, I'll speak to this one now. Similar to Councillor Pearl, before I was elected, I thought this was a really important project to do because there's a lot of things tied to it, the safe lighting along the path for just getting from one part of Port Melbourne to the next. I think that's going to be a great uplift. But being a lagoon originally, it takes a lot more expense to make it to stick, to make the works worthwhile, that it's going to endure. And I just don't have the confidence that that water table is going to be manageable, and that would have to redo this again soon. There are other standalone sporting facilities in our municipality, such as Peanut Farm, that's mostly just one oval. But where we see them grouped, you see the better community growth of these sporting clubs, that it supports them better when there's multiple ovals or soccer pitches together rather than in isolation. However, I also understand we have very limited access to new land to deliver the amount of sports fields that we require, not only in number but also in the amount of hours that they can actually be used. So we're at a loss in the area to be able to cater for the growth, and that's one of the dilemmas, and including when the GP's on, the sports clubs need to have another place to go. So we are very, arm twisted behind your back, essentially, on the sporting side of things, and therefore we're forced to use something that I find substandard for delivering a sporting oval. You wouldn't put it there if you were master planning. But it comes at a really high cost because it costs more to deliver on a water table like that. And the double-story pavilion, I still think that's a good idea. I like that it's looking at like a modular one to keep the expenses really straightforward and delivering a building that is fit for purpose, but also has that flexibility around our growing inner city community who may want to throw a birthday party or, some kind of family celebration where they don't have the space in their own small homes. So I'm okay with a lot of what this says. I'm disappointed for the dog community. I don't know how I'll actually vote, but I think you have the numbers to pass this, is my read of the cards. Are there any other councillors who want to speak to this? No? All right, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you got majority. All those against? All those abstaining? All right, so that's carried. All right, thank you. That's the end of that item. If you'd like to leave, you're welcome to, or you're welcome to stay through the whole council meeting. I'll just wait a moment for the gallery to clear if they'd like to leave. Next, we're going to move on to the presentation of reports. Now, some councillors have indicated they'd like to move a few items on block, so that'll be item 12.1, Cultural Development Fund, panel recommendations, updated terms of reference and objectives criteria, 13.1, South Melbourne Market Committee Charter, and 13.2, which is the record of informal meetings of council. Those ones can be on block, but councillors, to remind you can speak to any of those items. It's just so they're not going to be voted on individually. All right, the first report, though, that we will speak to is 9.1, the LGBTIQA plus action plan. This is consultation, feedback, and adoption. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers in relation to the report? I see none. Is there a councillor who would like to remove the officer's recommendation? Councillor Martin, who would like to second it? Councillor Baxter. Thank you. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. I hope you're all listening very intently earlier this evening when we had a couple of members of the public speak to us. Justine Dalariva, who's the Director of the Pride Centre, and Liam McAuliffe, who's the Chair of Council's LGBTIQA plus Advisory Committee, and they spoke so eloquently. I'd written down some notes about what I wanted to speak about, but they've covered just about everything that I would like to say. So really, I'd like to thank very much the subcommittee of the LGBTIQA plus working party that worked with council officers to develop this. I'd like to thank everyone who was involved in the consultation process. I think the changes that have been made to the document through the consultation process have improved it and made it even better and even stronger than it was before. And I look forward to its implementation. And I've just tried to pick one thing that Liam mentioned earlier, how this is really cementing Port Phillip as an inclusive city where members of the LGBTIQA plus community can feel safe, connected and celebrated. I think he nailed it in one there. I look forward to everyone endorsing this policy.
Thank you. Councillors, I just want to give you a little heads up that when we speak really close to the microphones, it's not coming through the recording very well. So maybe just sit back a little bit. Is that probably the right volume? Yeah? Good. All right. Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. Thank you so much to the LGBTIQA plus advisory committee for all the work that they've done here. This is the culmination of a serious amount of effort that started with before the election, actually, with a as part of the Rainbow Pledge. Rainbow Local Government ran a campaign to get councillors to sign the Rainbow Pledge that included a number of actions. This, developing and implementing an LGBTIQA plus action plan was one of them. And former councillor Catherine Copsey, who's now no longer on council, she's been elected to Parliament, but she put this motion, and it has sort of gone from there. So it's definitely something that we, as an accepting and vibrant community here, probably should have done a very long time ago. But the fact that we're doing it now is all the better. I wanted to just make some brief notes. We were some councillors, or all councillors, I'm not sure, were contacted by Rainbow Local Government to make some further submissions asking for some changes, and I just wanted to address those. And just I'm not going to amend this motion, but I do think I just want to address those things that have been brought up. So one of them is that the two areas where the feedback hadn't been incorporated. One was a recommendation that council advocate for the Melbourne Sports and Aquatic Centre to host a Pride Night. That now, obviously, because MSAC is not under our jurisdiction, that would only be advocacy. We couldn't really do much more than that. It's not part of the LGBTIQA plus action plan. That could still be pursued in other ways, though. So while it's not going to form part of this plan, I think that's something we could consider outside of that. The second was that Council conduct a study of the financial contribution of LGBTIQA plus consumers and businesses to the city and identify opportunities for growth. I believe that is covered in the plan with the action to promote ways to enhance LGBTIQA plus inclusion across our business community. It may not be as clearly worded as the lobby would prefer, but I think it is covered there. So I just wanted to cover off on those two things. I think I'm very happy with the action plan as it is now. I think that I know that if Councillor Nyagui was present here, he'd be able to speak to it as well in support, no doubt. I commend it to councillors.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this item? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll be abstaining from this vote here this evening. There's a lot of things I like about this policy. Let me flick around it. Particularly the open line. Council celebrates and embraces its diverse LGBTIQA plus communities whose invaluable contribution enrich the social, economic and cultural life of the city. Couldn't agree more, but there's some items within the report that I don't agree with. I don't feel it's appropriate to vote against the report because there's not, I don't disagree with large sections of the report, but there are some sections I don't agree with, and I will abstain accordingly. Some of those sections include 2.1, which is particularly the advanced LGBTIQA plus inclusion in schools and businesses. I don't think council, again, there's a number of sections in this policy which is outside the remit of council, and schools and businesses are equipped, I would suggest, better to deal with their customers and students and employees as opposed to council. We should stay focused on our community and our employees rather. Section 2.5, which is Rainbow Road, I reluctantly supported the Rainbow Road when it came up initially. It was one of the weirdest speaking engagements I've had in this chamber, where I effectively put a long list of concerns attached to it. But the traders were very keen for it. Fitzroy Street was in a bad situation at the time, and I thought it was important to have what I called the selfie effect to signal that the building was coming, to provide a bit of buzz and excitement, particularly to get people down there to help the traders. And I think the cost was $18,000 or thereabouts, so less than $20,000 at the time it was installed. And I was prepared, based on the information I had, to support that initiative at that sum of money. What I've subsequently learnt is the recent refresh cost $50,000, so $70,000 to paint a road when the building is now already constructed isn't good value for money as far as I can see. So 2.5. I don't agree with. 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, which focuses on, creates resources, around procurement policies. So ensures council procurement policies, enhance participation of LGBTIQA plus owned and operated businesses in line with council social procurement objectives, and updates council's procurement policies, processes and or code of conduct to promote LGBTIQA plus inclusionary practices in council supplies and use services, etc. I don't believe that should be included into our procurement policies. There's already a number of state and federal legislations which are detailed in this policy, which we have to abide by, which will encompass all of those. And we should be encouraging everybody within our community to apply for procurement measures within the city, which I'm not saying that precludes people from doing, but we should be keeping those policies as simple as possible in my view. Also, the 30 pages of the document itself is voluminous. It doubles up in a number of respects with existing policies within council and existing action plans, gender equality action plan, the council plan itself, the accessibility action plan, the reconciliation action plan, welcoming cities, positive ageing, the list goes on, as well as the legislative requirements. So I think less would have been more based on the fact this is being an annually reviewed document. And if it's annually reviewed, it will be updated, and particularly based on the report that's going to be provided to the advisory committee every year. So every document is living and breathing, but particularly this one. So my advice perhaps would have been narrow it and focus to make sure the key points of this get delivered. It's very broad. That's not a reason to vote against it, but I'll be abstaining from this vote here this evening, and I just wanted to make sure that some of my major comments were put on the record.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm fully supportive of the LGBTIQA plus community, their rights to equality, to live life without discrimination and enjoy a life in whatever way they want, which is consistent with all other parts of our community. I enjoy the colour and diversity of their community and appreciate that for some people they still might experience sort of unacceptable behaviour due to their sexuality and otherwise, and it's appalling that could still go on in this day and age. That aside, I don't support the need for a broad and expansive plan such as this for a specific group of our community, and the extensive detail and policies contained in this plan I believe goes too far. I won't be supporting this plan, not because I don't support the LGBTIQA plus community, but because I don't believe in a separate action group and the range of policies, resources that actively single out this one area of our community. Policies such as promoting social procurement that includes this community, when our procurement policy should just be blind to gender, race, age, sexuality and all other things. That should just be a standard procurement policy that I don't believe needs to call out individual sections of our community. Expanding markets for LGBTQIA+, as I said, goes too far. It's not our role in council to be promoting and expanding markets for any part of the community, calculating costs to council from one group of the community. Maybe we should calculate the costs of all aspects of different communities across the municipality. So overall, I feel proud with what this council does for the LGBTIQA plus community, how inclusive we are, and our ongoing support for this community, and I think that's great. But I don't feel that we need this sort of expansive, extensive, and some of the policies that are part of this plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further, Councillor? You want to close? All right. Anybody else want to speak before Councillor Martin closes? Oh, Councillor Sierikov.
Thank you, Mayor. Partially agree with some of the comments that Councillor Pearl and Councillor Clark have made. They make very good points. I think that we're all very supportive of the LGBTIQ community, and that we're really proud to have the Pride Centre here in St Kilda. And Council has provided the LGBTIQ community with a huge amount of resources in terms of the land acquisition and the ongoing support of when we have the yearly Pride March. And we're all very, very, very happy and very proud to be a part of that march each year. I'm really also partially supportive of this document that's been brought to us, but I'm not 100% supportive of it. I would like this policy to actually go back for refinement and a closer look at what they're asking council to deliver because when we all do have human rights, and we all have equal opportunity, and nobody should be discriminated against, no matter who you are or what part of the community you come from. And that applies to the workforce, obviously, and that if we're going to do procurement, I don't see how we should be preferring one group over another group. So I'm not really 100% sure of where it's going with this procurement, when everybody should be equally be able to apply or put in a tender on a project. And that doesn't mean, and that tender process does not discriminate against anybody according with today's laws. So I'm not really happy with, totally happy with the way the procurement has been included into this policy. And I'm also not quite sure, and I did ask officers about the points made around the education, the allying of council with education and schools. I think that's something that has to be addressed directly by the Pride group or the Pride Centre and the LGBTIQ people with the Department of Education. I don't see how council can step into that role. So while I do like what's been developed, while most of it I do like what's been developed, I'm not totally supportive of the whole policy. And so until something better comes along or an improvement comes along to address those concerns, I'll be abstaining.
Thank you. Any further councillor comments? No? All right. Councillor Martin, you're welcome to close.
I'd like to put some of my councillors' concerns at ease. This is a 30-page document, but in fact there are only 10 pages which have got any actions. They run to a total of 38 paragraphs. Most of the paragraphs contain only one sentence. So it's actually quite a succinct plan. And yes, there are pages of definitions and there are pages of references. So if people want to read the rest of the plan and follow up the links, they could probably spend many, many hours learning extra information. But in fact, the guts of the action plan is contained on pages 11 to 20 in those 38 paragraphs, approximately 45 sentences all up. So it's not particularly wordy if you're looking to see what the guts of the plan are. In response to some of the concerns that have been raised, I noticed there was a concern about the council working with schools. Council works with schools already, particularly in secondary schools, but even in upper primary school. I can tell you that from my personal experience in schools, we deal with many issues that involve young people having issues with their sexuality, and often it's really useful for schools to be able to have a relationship where they can invite in people from outside to work with the students with the parents' consent, and that's where our council is able, when it's invited by the school principal with the consent of the parents involved, to support schools in whatever way they feel is necessary. So this is not the council telling schools how to run their programs. It's letting the schools know that they're here, they're available, there are services they can provide, and if the schools wish to avail themselves of those services, then that's up to the schools, and that's a school decision. And I know there's lots of concerns about procurement. Now, our procurement policy is very, very specific. We can't award a contract to someone because of their ethnic background or how they choose to present themselves or anything like that. What we can do, though, is we can make sure that we encourage everyone, particularly those groups in our community who may, in other areas or in previous years, have not wished to be involved in a procurement process because they felt they may have been disadvantaged by the process, to feel confident enough to apply for any council tender that's on offer. And then, as one of the other councillors mentioned, that procurement process will run blind once the contracts are in, as it has to. But this document's being very clear. We want members of the LGBTIQA+ community to feel confident that they're able to involve themselves in the council procurement process, knowing they won't be discriminated against and knowing full well that the system will run blind. And I could go on and pick up on some of the other concerns here. Really, as I say, with procurement, been raised by a couple of councillors, everybody should be encouraged to be involved in the council's procurement process once the process is done. Once the process is closed, once tenders are in, the process runs blind. So I don't think that the concerns that some of my colleagues have raised are really concerns at all. I think this policy simply franking, this action plan is simply franking what should be very good practice, and it should apply not just to members of the LGBTIQA plus community, but to any other group in the community that perhaps in the past has felt that they may have been, for whatever reason, disadvantaged. So again, I don't see any issue with Council adopting this plan. I commend it to you.
Thank you. We'll take that to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? 1 against. And all those abstaining? 3. All right. So hold on, give me a second. Yep. All right. So under the governance rules, that is declared to be a 4-4 split, and the mayor's casting vote will be at play. So I will exercise that mayor's casting vote in support of the officer's recommendation, and therefore there's 5 votes in favour and it passes.
It's requested division, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Sure. All right. All those in favour? Consolo, Martin, Baxter, Crawford. Then all those against? Clark. Those abstaining? Bond, Sarakoff, Pearl, and then the mayor's casting vote. Is that easy for the minutes? Yep. All right, thank you. Now, councillors, I just want to check in. We are just past 8 p.m. That's an hour and a half into the meeting. Does anybody need a comfort break? Any comfort break? Are you saying yes? Okay. 3 minutes? Well, I'm always late on this, so let's come back at 8:12. I know 8:10 be better, but that's too soon. Okay, see you 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, councillors, we're on to 9.2, the Community Grants Assessment Panel Reference Committee, appointment 2023 to 2025. So everyone in the gallery, can you please take your seats? Thank you. And councillors' seats. Thank you, everyone. Okay, again, we're on to 9.2. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? 9.2, Community Grants Assessment Panel. No. It wasn't identified on it, but we can go through. Hi, excuse me, can everyone please take your seats? Thank you. All right. Again, we're on to 9.2. It's not one of the ones on block. We're going through this one individually. Are there any questions of the council officers in relation to the report? Do we need to add the names, or is that done confidentially later? You do need to add the names? Are they on the screen? Oh, okay. So we'll need someone to move this, and then that doesn't make sense. We have to move it, and then the names come up. Okay, there they go. Okay, the names are up there. So, all right. Lisa Chen, Joanne McDonald, Victoria Mackey, and Brian Hanlon are being added to the list. I'm happy to move that. Would someone like to second it? Councillor Martin to second. All right. Thank you. I have previously sat on the community panel, and it's a great experience. So I'm really delighted to see some new names on here, some I'm actually familiar with, actually, I think, that will contribute to the community getting to assess these grants that are a real asset for our community. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you to all those wonderful people who put their hands up to this voluntary but very necessary position. Thank you to everyone who is involved in the selection of them, and look forward to getting their recommendations to the next round of grants.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to it? Otherwise, let's take to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. On to 9.3, the Older Persons Advisory Committee, new member nominations for August 2023 to November 2024 for endorsement. Do we have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? You have a question? No. Okay. Then we're looking for someone to move it. Councillor Martin to move. Councillor Bond to second. Too slow over there, Councillor Bond. Just kidding. All right, Councillor Martin to speak to it.
I was a member of the panel that interviewed some outstanding applicants. We're blessed to have so many people out there who want to give their time freely to our community, and I'm sure that these people who have put their hands up to join OPAC will be equally good, if not even better than the current OPAC panel. So hope you all endorse this.
Great. Councillor Bond? Anybody else speaking to it? Otherwise, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Great. All right, on 10.1, the J. Talbot basketball facility. Any questions of the officers in relation to the report? Councillor Crawford?
There were some comments made by people speaking tonight that it's not highly utilised. Do we have any data to suggest either way, like the kind of level of usage?
Online, Dana Pritchard.
Through you, Mayor. I'd have to take that on notice. I do know that the park is used, the playground is used and the basketball court is used in its current state. It is in pretty poor condition at the moment, the basketball court, so it wouldn't be utilised to its full extent. But otherwise, the general park usage, I would have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford again.
Was there also the opportunity during the community consultation for community members to suggest other uses for the park, or was it only a basketball court? I mean, I know that was out there, but there was still, I guess I'm asking, was there still opportunity to feedback about other suggestions as alternatives?
Through you, Mayor, the project was specifically about the basketball court and the upgrade to the basketball court. However, we were open to other suggestions with regards to the park. In the public space strategy, the park is not due for an upgrade, so that wasn't part of what we we're looking at doing. There has been service planning done with regards to recreation and an audit on informal recreation, and basketball courts informal recreation basketball courts were something that has come up as lacking within the municipality at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Sierkoff?
One of the speakers who spoke tonight raised concerns about when basketball is being thrown towards the hoop, that it could end up over on the Barclay Street. Can Council please clarify what the distance is between the basketball hoop and the 1.2 metre high fence to the rear of it, please?
Through you, Mayor, the basketball court, well, from the distance from the hoop to the fence is 10 metres. There will be vegetation in between the hoop and the fence, and risk assessments have been undertaken, and we believe that is a safe distance, and mitigations are in place to stop balls going on the road.
I'll ask a question real quick. The 1.2 metre height of that fence, has that been determined for a certain reason? Dana?
Right. Through you, Mayor, it's consistent with the other fencing in the area. There's a fence there already and it's consistent with what is currently there, and we think that it is suitable for the usage of the space.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
I can't. My visual memory is not great, but we don't actually have fences around the Peanut Farm basketball courts, do we? We have a small fence on one side.
All right. Any further questions? Who would like to move the officer's recommendation or something else? Councillor Bond? To second? Councillor Sierkoff? Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, happy to move this. The current basketball court there, if people are not aware, has a dirt floor, so it's not exactly a concrete floor where you can actually bounce a basketball, which would probably explain why no one uses it. Shifting it further away from the National Theatre will obviously help the National Theatre. It's into a bit more of an open location, which means it gets better passive surveillance of the park. The park is moderately well used. The basketball court's never used, but the kids' playground is, and there's always people sitting in there and walking through. I know one of the speakers earlier tonight mentioned safety. Having people here playing basketball will actually make the park more safe than it currently is, because you'll draw people in there. There's a few lights and things around, so people will be able to sit there, and not all night, but they'll be able to throw a ball around, and it's not going to attract full competition games and all that sort of thing. It's somewhere where people can go and just have a few shots and things like that. I don't think it's going to cause any concern whatsoever to other users of the park. And if there's 3 or 4 people playing basketball there, the park suddenly becomes a lot safer than it is if there's no one in there. So I think it's a good thing. I don't see balls rolling on the road, so I don't see any of the downside here that some of the speakers here tonight mentioned. I think this will be a good addition to the park and hopefully help activate this park, which probably suffers from not having enough reasons to go here. It just sits there. So yeah, looking forward to this being built.
Councillor Serkoff? I'll speak to it. Being very bad at basketball, when I try to shoot it, it hits the rim often and it ricochets quickly. Now, that I think the park can buffer from that fine, but I can see one angle on the, look at the basketball to the right, that it may hit and go where the fence is not as long, that there may be an opportunity to extend the fence a little bit longer than actually just behind it, because it narrows and goes even closer to the road in that corner. I think a higher fence would actually be suitable in this location, but I get from the consistency, I'm probably not having the visual there of whether that's a good or bad thing, but just reading through it and listening to people's comments tonight, those are some thoughts I think should be implemented here. But I really think this would be a great uplift to this area. Having just spent a whole week of school holidays going every day to this park for a program at National Theatre, I can see it has so much potential. And I think this is one thing that's really going to draw people to the area to use it more, because it does have a reputation in the past of not being a cool place to go. And therefore, you have that antisocial behaviour because you don't have the eyes of the people using it. So this will be a good uplift. Anybody else speaking to this? All right, let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, now we're on to 10.2, which is St Kilda Landscape Works Upgrade, Road Closure. What did I say? Oh, sorry, Landside. Sorry. Landscape is a word I say more frequently than landslide, so sorry. No, it's fine. Do we have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? No. All right. Is there a councillor who would like to move this officer recommendation or something else? Councillor Crawford? Who would like to second it? Councillor Baxter, is that yes? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to it? No. Councillor Baxter, okay. Anybody else like to speak to this item? All right, we're going to just move through this. On to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Making up time here. Now, as we said earlier, we're going to move the last 3 items of the reports en bloc. So I'm now seeking a councillor who will move this. Councillor Pearl, who would like to second it. Councillor Martin. Now, you can speak to any of these items. There's just the one vote. All right, Councillor Pearl.
No reserve, thanks.
Councillor Martin. Anybody else speaking to any of these items? Should I read out the items, or I already did that before? No, it's fine. Okay. Yes, Councillor Crawford?
I just want to say that thanks to the officers on the updated reference and for the CDF committee and all of the people that have been recommended to help us on that committee. I think it's the idea of a committee pool, given that the CDF now with the festivals coming into it, there's a lot more work involved. So having such a broad depth of expertise and knowledge in the city that we can draw on will be fantastic for us making better decisions.
Oops. All right, any other councillors speaking to this? Okay, let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you, everyone. All right, on to notices of motion. Councillors, we have no notice of motions on tonight's agenda. On to reports by councillor delegates. Councillors, do you have any reports from councillor delegate roles? Not tonight. Okay. Onto urgent business. Councillor Pearl has requested to raise an item of urgent business being independent review. This item is confidential in accordance with Section 3 of the Local Government Act 2020 as it relates to legal privileged information and private commercial information. Therefore, this item will be considered during the confidential council meeting. So on to confidential matters. Councillors, we have 2 confidential reports being considered tonight. That's 17.1 public space land acquisition strategy and 17.2 proposed item of confidential urgent business and independent review. I now call upon a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public to consider the confidential items. Thank you, Councillor Sirikoff. Second by Councillor Martin. Thank you. I now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Councillors, we will now conclude the public part of this meeting. I advise members of the public that there are no further open items to be discussed. This will be the conclusion of the public meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Just before we do, Madam Mayor, if I could just seek clarification, I haven't read the governance procedures on the item of urgent business, but it's usual protocol that a councillor would put a motion to move the item of urgent business to be accepted by council. Can I get clarification under the standing rules about how that would operate?
Through you, Mayor, as the item's confidential, we will take a vote for the item an item of urgent business to be considered in the confidential section, so that can be discussed in that forum.
So we transfer the urgent item into confidential, and then we deal with it to be treated as urgent and confidential at the same time.
Through you, Mayor, yes.
Thanks for the clarification.
Following precedent.
That's fine. It's a rare occurrence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. To those online and those in the gallery, we appreciate your attendance tonight and your input.